Thank you very much to all of you for coming, and to the organisers and all of our speakers. I found it a really brilliant day. I hope you all enjoyed it too. I found it scary at the wealth of knowledge in the room at times, and also very, very inspiring. Jamie stole my line about being a campaigner, not an economist, but I think it's probably fair to say that given the level of discussion in this room, we're all economists, and we should reclaim that word. So this session is called, what needs to change and how do we change it? And I think the conclusion is probably that everything needs to change. And in a way, I think this is a good thing. I think it demonstrates the interconnectedness of all of these issues and how it's no longer good enough to kind of deal with one specific issue or frit around the edges. We do need to reinvent the economy, and as Richard spoke about, this is what this whole process is about, and hopefully we'll go on further from here. Just to kind of demonstrate, I suppose, why a lot of the organisations involved have come to this point. I thought we need to all work together and shape something new. Just to use the example of global debt, that's what Jubilee Scotland works on. And when the Jubilee 2000 campaign was founded by Anne, who spoke earlier, along with some others, it was certainly in the eyes of the public, if not the founders, about cancelling the debt of the poorest countries. It was about poverty alleviation, it was about charity. And then that happened, and people thought, well, why just the poorest countries? Why just the 38 countries that we've deemed to have an unsustainable level of debt? What is a sustainable level of debt? Bangladesh didn't receive debt cancellation. It was 12th from the bottom in the UN Development Index, and was forced to service its debts ahead of investing in healthcare and education. How was that a sustainable level of debt? And so then we started thinking about where this debt comes from, when we look at the UK's lending practices, and the fact that last year only 3% of all loans coming from the UK underwent any kind of human rights or environmental impact assessment. And these are loans for arms sales and large extraction projects mainly. So the human rights and environmental impacts probably should have been assessed. And now, of course, we have crisis in the Eurozone, and here we've got the debt of the countries in the periphery, a lot of focus on UK debt. And you try and get to the heart of that, and you look at where did it come from? Is the government debt increasing because of bailing out private banks, turning private debt into public debt, the financialisation, which we heard so much about earlier, debts being bought and sold in a heartbeat, countries owing money to themselves, so what does cancelling even mean? So what I'm saying is, that's just debt, and we've seen the whole range of issues talked about today. So I understand why things haven't changed much in the past few years, because it's incredibly complex, it's incredibly opaque and hard to get our head around. And when you start looking into it, it becomes a Pandora's box. But it is a Pandora's box that needs to be opened. And I think most of us in the room realise that. We need to open that box to give us the power to change it. And that's something that's come up a lot, this theme of power and the lack thereof. So there's obviously power of there's political power, there's being First Minister, Prime Minister, CEO of RBS or Shell, who could make some of these changes. But there is the power that comes with knowledge. Anne spoke about the complexity of these systems, kind of helping them get away with it for so long, and I think there's a whole lot of truth in that, and I think it's definitely been to the advantage of some of these systems that we don't really understand them, and we don't really want to understand them. We'll leave it to the experts, that'll all be fine. Obviously, 2008 showed us that that's not really the case, and in that sense was a good thing. And since then, there has been a reawakening of people learning about these issues. I think it's been a brilliant mix of people here today. There's campaigners, there's economists, there's some people that just wandered in because they thought it looked interesting and they could see free food, and they're really well done. And that's great, and we need to get these kind of cross groupings, so we're not just talking to ourselves. And we've talked about the independence referendum, the kind of big tartan elephant in the room, but that too has been amazing on both sides of the debate. To see fiscal deficits being discussed in a pub is a wonderful thing for a geek like me. And so there was talk about capacity earlier. What capacity does Scotland have? And in terms of media and expertise, that we might be limited. But in terms of capacity of engaged campaigners, I think we're in a really, really good position, however the vote goes, to push for some of these changes. You know, we have a group of people that are educated and engaged to take action, and the debate has been about justice and the economy. It's not focused on the issues the politicians or the media are talking about. So knowledge is power, but as we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. So how do we turn these kind of distressing facts that we've seen and these anger-inducing kind of problems into action? And one thing I will take away from today is that there actually are things we can do, which is great. Because sometimes you look at these huge global systems and you think, well, how on earth do we change that? Do we wait for a revolution? Do we wait for a new government? What do we do? And there are some things. What do we do with these ideas? I mean, the first thing I would say is share them. You know, talk about them. Show people that there's not just one way of thinking and one way that things have to be. You know, and there's obviously policy change and things. Some of the things Richard listed that we as organisations and hopefully you will be working on to come up with, you know, policy ideas and action ideas around. If there's anything here that sparks your imagination, follow it up. Try and start your own local bank and your local authority. FOI people about PFI deals that are happening in your area. And the other thing that I think came across really strongly is to be vigilant for these things happening. Small changes that seem inconsequential, we found out later, were actually set up for something like TTIP, you know, some kind of obscure-ish legislation which has huge impacts on us all. And there were people earlier talked about the missed opportunity of the financial crisis, about how, you know, we essentially nationalised the banks and then let them get away with things because we didn't want to interfere. We can't let that happen again. When there is an opportunity, whether it's a constitutional change, whether it's another financial crisis, whether it's political change, we need to be there to be vigilant, to say it's a crisis, but it's an opportunity, and take some of this energy and ideas and use it in that way. And finally, we're just all going to have to work really hard. That, you know, that's the answer for a lot of these things. It's going to take a load of effort, but hopefully you'll agree that it's going to be worth it. Thanks.